I am a ghost on a planet not my own. A woman from Earth thrust into a world of alphas and omegas. Born without the glands that define them, unable to perceive the pheromones that rule their lives. Here I am an aberration. In the smog-choked depths of the 6th District, at the bottom of the Terran Federation, survival itself is a privilege. So I sold what was left of me to the Dalton family. They gave me a new life, surgically implanting a gland, a foreign organ that pulsed beneath my skin, one that was an 80% match to his pheromones. General Kalen Sterling. I was married to the Federation's celebrated god of war. Our union was a business contract, a lie built on manufactured biology. His contempt for me was a given. It was only natural when an Omega existed who was a 95% match for him. I knew my time was limited. The night Kalen found me on the sofa, I was immersed in a textbook on mech repair, the low light of the living room casting long shadows. He seemed unusually buoyant, a rare energy crackling around him. He said nothing, simply running a hand through my hair before lifting me effortlessly into his arms and carrying me to the bedroom. When he leaned down to kiss me, the scent of bourbon hit me first. He'd been drinking. At 28, Kalen Sterling was the youngest Major General in the Federation's history, its only SSS-level alpha. He had always been a man who treated intimacy like a chore, a necessary function of his biology. His face was a mask of control, but alcohol, it seemed, could chip away at the stone. A trail of searing kisses traced a path down her skin, relentless and descending. His calloused hands, accustomed to the grip of a weapon, explored the gland on her neck, rubbing the sensitive flesh until a dull ache bloomed. He murmured into her ear, his voice a low rumble, telling her how intoxicating her scent was, like roses after a storm. For a moment, her own confusion cleared, replaced by a raw, primal instinct. She silenced him with her own mouth, pulling him down into the depths with her. The universe's cruelest joke was that I could hear him. I could hear them all. My senses were sharp, but I could not smell him, not really. I could not smell anyone's pheromones. My husband, Kalen Sterling, was unaware of this fact, even after 3 years of a shared bed. When I awoke, the space beside me was cold. It was nearly 10 in the morning. The previous night had been a blur of desperate intensity. Kalen had been so consumed by his needs, and I had heard him mention that his susceptibility period was approaching. I rose and walked down the hall to the room at the far end. It was designated as a guest room, but it had been my room when I first arrived at his sterile, sprawling home. After one of his susceptibility periods, he had started carrying me from my bed to his, my exhausted body too weak to protest. Eventually, I just stayed. But many of my things remained in that old room, a space he never entered. From a drawer, I retrieved a small vial of pills and swallowed one dry. Downstairs, a pristine breakfast was laid out. A note sat on the table, the script on it bold and decisive, unmistakably Kalen's. It was a simple command to rest well, followed by a reminder that my parents, the Daltons, had requested to see me that evening. My terminal buzzed with a new message. It was from Julian Dalton. He informed me his gland transplant surgery was complete. His pheromones, he boasted, were now a 95% match to the general's. A passing maid, noticing my stillness, commented on how wonderfully the general and his wife got along. I offered her a thin smile. My existence here was a transaction. A fact Kalen Sterling never knew was itself layered with deception. Every scrap of warmth I received from him was a byproduct of this world's absurd biology. Without that 80% match, I would have been nothing more than another piece of human refuse, despised for selling her body for a chance at a better life. A man like Kalen, born to power, could never comprehend the desperation that claws at you when even breathing feels like a luxury. And SSS-level alpha's pheromones were notoriously difficult to match. The highest compatible omega found for him before me was a mere 30%, not nearly enough to soothe the violent urges of his susceptibility period. He spent those times pumped full of inhibitors, a chemical war raging inside his own body. Meanwhile, the Akane Alliance, 15 light-years away, was a persistent threat on the Federation's border. Kalen led the armies, a bulwark against chaos, until a near-fatal injury put him in a coma. The military doctors issued an ultimatum. If his pheromones could not be stabilized, his body would never again be fit for the battlefield. That was when the Dalton family made their move. They presented me their long-lost, exiled, illegitimate daughter. They wanted a foothold in the military-industrial complex, and they were willing to trade a daughter for it. Not that I was truly their daughter. But Kalen, for all his fury at their naked ambition, could not refuse the deal. Our marriage had no ceremony, no witnesses, no blessings. The ring on my finger had been purchased by Marcus Dalton. On our first night, Kalen had marked me, his teeth sinking into my neck as he took me with a cold, detached efficiency. They said the pleasure of a true bond was euphoric. They called his pheromones, the scent of pine and winter frost, the most alluring in the Federation. I smelled nothing. I felt only pain. Afterward, I cleaned myself off and dragged my aching body back to the guest room. The next day, he returned to the war. With Kalen's backing, the Dalton family's starship maintenance business flourished, expanding from the 3rd district into the 2nd. They had never dared to seek me out in the 1st district, but now, with Julian's message, their purpose was clear. That evening, Kalen came home early. He found me reading and interrupted, his presence a restless energy in the quiet room. He patted my hand, a rare gesture of comfort outside the bedroom, and assured me the Daltons wouldn't dare cause me any trouble. The irony was almost laughable. He seemed to forget that I was one of them. He then grew serious, his face tense, telling me he had something important to discuss with me next week. Cold knot formed in my stomach. He already knew. He knew about the Omega with the higher match. The doorbell chimed. It was Marcus Dalton, his wife, and Julian, a perfect family portrait of ambition. Julian was impeccably dressed in a silk shirt and velvet suit, a vision of the pampered Omega. Upon seeing Kalen, a delicate blush bloomed on his cheeks as he murmured a greeting. At the dinner table, Marcus lavished praise upon Kalen, thanking him for his support of their ventures in the 2nd district. Kalen remained unmoved, his glass untouched. He stated coldly that he would have someone contact them about their business in Zone 2, but that they were not to come to his home uninvited again. Marcus, flustered but triumphant, raised his glass to hide his expression. He then presented his true reason for the visit. He explained that his son, Julian, was preparing for the Federation's Unified Selection exams and asked if he might stay with us for a few weeks, hoping to benefit from the General's guidance. Kalen's face was like ice as he refused, stating plainly that he did not want outsiders in their house. How can my brother be an outsider? I smiled, placing my chopsticks down. Under the table, I patted Kalen's thigh. The Daltons' plan was audacious. The sudden emergence of an adult Omega with a near-perfect match was statistically impossible, but they were betting that once Julian was marked, under the influence of a 95% compatibility, no alpha would question the details. My 3-year contract wasn't over, but this was my chance to leave. Beneath the table, Kalen's hand found mine, his fingers weaving through my own. No, he repeated. Husband, I said, the word feeling foreign and sharp on my tongue. It was the first time I had ever called him that. It was a reminder. This was a deal. I fulfilled his needs, and in return, the small requests of my benefactors should be met. His dark eyes locked onto mine, and for a moment, I feared I had pushed too far. But then, with a curt nod, he acquiesced. He would arrange a room for Julian on the 3rd floor. Later that night, the bedroom was a place of punishment. Kalen was relentless, as if exorcising the frustration of the evening. He demanded I call him by his name, his title, anything, his breath hot against my ear as he reminded me my brother was just upstairs. When it was over, he carried my limp body to the bath to be cleaned. I drifted in and out of consciousness, a deep exhaustion settling in my bones. Kalen slept soundly beside me, his body a furnace, his arm locked around me. I remembered when we were first married. The slightest noise would wake him, a soldier's instinct. Now he slept like the dead. Slipping out of bed, I went to the living room for water. A voice hissed from the shadows. "You bitch." Julian stood there, his eyes wide with fury, pointing at the red marks visible above the collar of my nightgown. He sneered, asking if I had developed feelings for the general. I drank the water, my throat raw. I told him that once he was here, I would leave. I just wanted the 3 million star CRS the Daltons had promised me. He scoffed, calling me inferior scum from District 6, unworthy of being Kalen's wife. He reminded me of what I was, a monster born without glands. He said without the Daltons, I'd have been sold to some degenerate in the slums for sport. He was right. I wasn't from this world. My name was Alara Vance. On Earth, I was a courier. A truck ran a red light. I woke up on a mountain of garbage, the acidic stench of decay strangely familiar from a childhood spent scavenging. This was the Xenos Federation, a place of alphas, betas, and omegas. And I was less than nothing. The garbage dump was in District 6, the Federation's forgotten underbelly, a lawless place of criminals and refugees. It was there I learned the harsh realities of this new world, seeing an Omega marked by a brute and yet bound to him by pheromonal dependence. I thought my lack of glands was a blessing until a man with a scar by his eye tried to sell me, excited by my unique deformity. I kicked him and ran, hiding, surviving on scraps, a rag wrapped around my neck to hide my secret. I found work in a small repair shop, my skills from Earth earning me 2 pieces of bread a day and a straw mat to sleep on. Then came the news that brought both hope and despair. Major General Kalen Sterling was proposing a census and redevelopment of District 6. For the poor, it was a miracle. For me, an undocumented alien, it was a death sentence. Federation warships descended, their uniformed soldiers a stark contrast to the grime. One day, a civilian mech was brought to the shop, its owner unable to start it. The owner, a B-class alpha from the 3rd district named Leo, watched as my boss struggled. I asked to try. If I fixed it, I wanted money. Leo offered 10,000 star CRS, a fortune. Drawing on my earthly knowledge, I rerouted the engine's power conduits. It hummed to life. As Leo handed me a case of Cirrus, a gust of wind blew the rag from my neck, exposing my smooth, glandless skin. I tried to run, but he called out to me, a strange light in his eyes. He offered me a deal, a legal identity, and a lot of money. Leo was Marcus Dalton's assistant. They needed someone to disappear, to become someone else. They implanted me with a gland, turning me into Alara, the long-lost Dalton, a perfect 80% match for the Federation's greatest hero. The pain of the surgery, the rejection my body fought against, the coldness of my new family. It was all a price I was willing to pay to live. The next day, a friend of the Sterling family came to visit, an arrogant alpha named Ethan Thorne. Julian was in the kitchen, preparing an elaborate meal, playing the part of the perfect Omega. Ethan lounged on the sofa, his eyes raking over Julian, then me. He whispered mockingly in my ear, suggesting that my usefulness was coming to an end. He'd heard a better-matched Omega had been found. He made a crude remark about my skills in bed, offering to take me in after Kalen discarded me. He sneered that everyone knew I was just a commodity the Daltons used to buy influence, a living treatment for the general. Ethan. Kalen's voice cut through the air like a blade. He had just returned from an interstellar conference. Julian rushed to his side, but Kalen sidestepped him. "What are you saying to my wife?" Ethan paled as Kalen's SSS-class pheromonal pressure filled the room, a crushing weight that made him tremble. Kalen kicked him to the floor, his combat boot pressing into Ethan's chest. He informed Ethan that the land deal his family wanted was now off the table. He warned him that if he ever heard him speak to me that way again, he would have Ethan's father apologize to me personally. Later, Kalen asked me why I hadn't told him about the insults, why I let people speak to me that way. I simply pulled him into a kiss, unwilling to explain that I had heard far worse, even from him in the early days of our marriage. He held me then, his arms a cage of muscle around my chest. I asked him if he knew about the 95% match. He said nothing. Everyone was ready. A strange softness bloomed in my chest, a feeling I quickly crushed. These were illusions. 2 years with a man, even one as cold as Kalen, had forged a strange attachment. He had given me the first home I'd ever known in this world. But it wasn't real. His susceptibility period was approaching. He sent me a message on the terminal, telling me to meet him at another villa in the city. I forwarded the address to Julian. I took the money the Daltons gave me, blocked everyone's contact information, and boarded an interstellar ship to the 4th District. I left a signed divorce agreement on Kalen's desk. Julian, trained from birth to be the perfect Omega, would be a much better fit for him. He would be a more efficient tool. I would be forgotten. My hand brushed against the armrest of my seat. I was still wearing Kalen's wedding ring. I meant to throw it out the window, but I hesitated, stuffing it into my case instead. Perhaps it could be sold for money one day. I rented a small apartment in District 4, a place of factories and processing plants, a world away from the sterile opulence of the 1st District. I felt safe here. I studied from morning until night for the Unified Selection exam. Once I passed, I would find a way to have the artificial gland removed. I could be Ilara Vance again, or whatever was left of her. The day I walked out of the examination hall, I felt a flicker of hope. But the usual post-exam chatter was absent. The crowd was silent, an oppressive quiet hanging in the air. Then I saw them. A line of AHT-42 Python military vehicles parked outside. My blood ran cold. As I tried to slip away through a back entrance, a hand clamped down on my shoulder. It was Kalen. His face was a thundercloud. He looked down at me, his grip like steel. He asked if I had any idea what the past few days had been like for him. The pain in my shoulder was sharp, but my voice was steady when I told him we were divorced. He laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. Divorced? He pulled the agreement from his coat pocket and tore it to shreds before my eyes. He gripped my chin, forcing me to look at him. "My wife," he said, each word a piece of ice. "What kind of a man do you think I am, to let you send another Omega to my bed?" He paused, his eyes searching mine. "Were you never curious?" "I just wanted to live." It was the same wish I'd had on Earth. Abandoned at birth, raised in an orphanage where kindness was scarce. Adopted at 7, abandoned again at 9. I lived on the streets, snatching food with wild dogs, until a kind old woman who ran a repair shop took me in. My grandmother. She was the only family I ever had. When she got sick, I dropped out of high school to pay her medical bills, wearing my uniform to her bedside so she would think I was still in school. Her last wish was for me to live for myself, to be happy. As Kalen cuffed my hands and led me back to his transport, all I could think was that I hoped my grandmother couldn't see me now, sold and bought like an object. He was silent the entire journey back to the first district. He brought me to a room where Marcus and Julian Dalton were kneeling, trembling. The usual arrogance was gone, replaced by pure terror. Faint whip marks were visible on Julian's neck. "Alara," Kalen said, his voice dangerously calm. "Because you are my wife, I showed the Daltons courtesy. That does not mean you can conspire with them to deceive me." I stared at the marks on Julian. My mind reeled. I asked Kalen how he could do that to his Omega, driven by his biological instincts. "I never marked him," Kalen sneered. "Are you disappointed?" My eyes widened in disbelief. It wasn't possible. The 95% match. His susceptibility period. I asked him how he could have possibly survived it. Kalen walked towards me, his steps slow and deliberate. He began to roll up the sleeve of his uniform. His arm, from wrist to elbow, was a roadmap of overlapping scars, old and new, a testament to years of self-inflicted pain.